Disasters. We picture earthquakes, tsunamis, meteors, acts of God, right? But many of the world's worst catastrophes aren't random. They're man-made. They're the result of powerful people choosing profit over safety, greed over lives. These aren't accidents. They're choices. Slow-motion car crashes we all see coming but can't stop. It's the official taking a bribe for a shoddy building, the CEO cutting safety corners, the politician ignoring climate warnings. Each decision is a brick in the wall of a future disaster, and when it collapses, it's always the vulnerable who get crushed. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a business model. The blueprint: gain power, enrich yourself, ignore warnings, dismantle regulations, and when disaster strikes, blame fate or the victims. It's a cycle of corruption and denial repeated worldwide. Tonight, we're touring preventable calamities, how oil-rich nations run out of food, why factories collapse, how cities sink, rivers die, and forests burn, all for someone's gain. This isn't just finger-pointing, it's about understanding the mechanism. If we see how these disasters are built, maybe we can start dismantling them, because every catastrophe has a blueprint, and it's written in human decisions. Let's break it down, piece by piece, and maybe, just maybe, we can change the ending. Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserves, yet millions starve. In the 2000s, oil money poured in, but instead of investing, leaders spent wildly, nationalized industries, and printed money. Corruption flourished, billions vanished from the state oil company, infrastructure crumbled, and contracts went to loyalists, not experts. When oil prices fell, the economy collapsed. Hyperinflation made money worthless. Supermarkets emptied, hospitals ran out of medicine, and the middle class scavenged for food. This wasn't a natural disaster, it was engineered by leaders who chose ideology and self-enrichment over economic sense. Millions fled, creating a refugee crisis. Crime soared. Meanwhile, those responsible live in luxury, untouched by the chaos they caused. Venezuela is a textbook case. Greed and corruption can destroy a nation from within. The architects of disaster always seem to escape the rubble. The people pay the price. It's not fate, it's failure by design. And it's happening in more places than you think. Let's keep going. That cheap t-shirt? It might have been made in Rana Plaza, Bangladesh. In 2013, the 8-story building collapsed, not from an earthquake but from greed. Over 1,100 workers died, thousands more were injured. The owner illegally added floors, used shoddy materials, and ignored warnings about cracks. Factory managers forced workers inside, threatening their jobs if they refused. The building pancaked, burying them alive. This wasn't an accident, it was the cost of cheap fashion. Pressure for low prices drives factory owners to cut corners on safety and wages. Corrupt officials took bribes, inspectors looked away, and global brands demanded ever cheaper clothes. Outrage followed, but little changed. As long as profit trumps safety, there will be more Rana Plazas. The victims weren't just casualties of a collapse, they were casualties of a system that values a $5 t-shirt over a human life. Their deaths were preventable. They were written off as a cost of doing business. The real price of fast fashion is paid in blood. And the cycle continues. Who's really responsible? Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, is sinking, up to 10 inches a year in some places. The cause? Rampant illegal groundwater extraction because the city's water system fails half its people. Everyone knows it's happening, but politicians avoid tough fixes, preferring short-term gains over real solutions. Flooding is now routine. The sea invades homes, especially in poor neighborhoods. The wealthy live above the problem, literally and figuratively. The government's answer? Move the capital to Borneo, abandoning millions. It's not a solution, it's surrender. Jakarta's sinking isn't a natural disaster, it's the result of decades of mismanagement and neglect. The poor suffer most, while leaders dodge responsibility. This is what happens when inaction is easier than governance. The city is drowning in political failure, and the clock is ticking. Will anyone step up before it's too late? Or will Jakarta become a cautionary tale for the world? The choice is still ours. Yemen's crisis isn't just war, it's water. One of the world's most water-scarce countries, Yemen drained its aquifers for decades, mostly to grow khat, a cash crop favored by the elite. The government subsidized this, ignoring warnings that Sana'a could run dry. When war erupted, water became a weapon. Infrastructure was bombed, blockades cut off fuel for pumps. Millions lost access to clean water, triggering a massive cholera outbreak. The powerful who profited from khat aren't the ones dying of thirst or disease. Ordinary people pay the price for decades of resource mismanagement and corruption. The water crisis was engineered long before the first shot was fired. Now, it's being exploited in war. This is what happens when short-term profit trumps survival. The real disaster started long before the headlines, and it's still unfolding. Who will stop it? The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia's pride, Egypt's nightmare. Built on the Blue Nile, it promises electricity for millions but threatens water supplies downstream. Egypt depends on the Nile for survival. Ethiopia wants development. The dispute? How fast to fill the dam's reservoir. Too fast and Egypt's crops and people suffer. Negotiations have stalled. Ethiopia acts alone. Egypt threatens retaliation. Nationalism and distrust fuel the standoff, while technical solutions are ignored. The dam could be a symbol of cooperation, but instead, it's a powder keg. Millions' lives hang in the balance. When leaders choose posturing over partnership, everyone loses. Even progress can become disaster if greed and pride win out. The river's fate is still undecided, but the warning signs are clear. In 2019, a dam at Vale's iron mine in Brumadinho, Brazil, collapsed, unleashing a toxic wave that killed hundreds. This wasn't a freak accident. Vale knew the dam was unstable. Internal reports warned of the risk, but fixing it would cost money, so they gambled with lives. Auditors certified the dam as safe, prioritizing profit over truth. The disaster buried workers, poisoned rivers, and devastated communities. It wasn't the first time. Vale had another deadly collapse just years before. No executives jailed, fines tied up in court. For Vale, it was just a cost of doing business. Without real consequences, these tragedies repeat. Corporate greed, regulatory failure, and corruption killed those people. The system protects the powerful, not the public. Until that changes, more disasters are inevitable. The lesson? Profit without accountability is deadly, and the victims are always the same. The Amazon, our planet's lungs, burns every year, not by accident, but by design. Fires are set by loggers, miners, and ranchers clearing land for profit. Under Bolsonaro, Brazil gutted environmental protections, encouraging destruction. Deforestation surged, visible from space. A few agribusiness giants profit while indigenous communities lose their homes and biodiversity vanishes. The carbon released accelerates climate change, fueling disasters worldwide. Sustainable alternatives exist, but they don't offer quick profits. The burning of the Amazon is a choice, one made by leaders captured by special interests. The cost is global, the benefit local. This is environmental corruption on a planetary scale. The world pays the price for a handful of fortunes. The Amazon's fate is a warning: short-term gain, long-term ruin. Will we listen? In 2022, Pakistan was submerged, 1/3 of the country underwater after record monsoon rains. Climate change played a role, but so did decades of corruption and neglect. Flood defenses were crumbling, funds for repairs siphoned off, and illegal construction blocked natural waterways. Warnings were ignored, planning was absent. When the floods came, embankments failed, and the poor suffered most. Some powerful landlords even diverted water to save their own land, sacrificing villages. The government's response was slow and chaotic. Disease spread, millions were left homeless. Pakistan emits less than 1% of global greenhouse gases, but its leaders made it more vulnerable. Natural hazards became human catastrophes. The lesson: bad governance turns climate shocks into societal collapse. The victims are left to rebuild, while those responsible move on. How many more warnings do we need? The Philippines faces typhoons every year, but the deadliest disasters are often landslides. These aren't just acts of nature, they're caused by illegal logging and mining that strip mountains bare. In 2006, Ginsagan was buried after heavy rain and years of deforestation. Over 1,100 died. Warnings were ignored, laws unenforced, and the poor were left in harm's way. Local officials looked the other way, complicit in the destruction. The pattern repeats. Storms hit, mudslides kill, and the root causes are forgotten. The poorest live on dangerous land because they have no choice. The government's job is to protect them, but too often, it fails. These deaths aren't inevitable, they're the result of choices. Profit for a few, tragedy for many. The cycle continues until accountability breaks it. Nature isn't the only culprit. Corruption is too. Will we keep burying the truth? What have we learned? Societal collapse isn't sudden. It's a process fueled by greed, corruption, and neglect. Disasters are built piece by piece through deliberate choices. The powerful rarely face consequences. They profit from both the boom and the bust. We must reject the myth that these are just acts of God or bad luck. They're human failures. Predictable, preventable, and repeated. A building collapses because it's allowed to. An economy implodes because it's plundered. Recognizing this is the first step. We must demand transparency, enforce regulations, and hold leaders accountable. Support journalism, protect whistleblowers, and insist on real consequences for those in power. Change is possible, but it's a long, hard fight. The alternative? Watching as greed builds a world destined to collapse. We can choose differently. We can dismantle the blueprint for disaster. The future is still unwritten. Let's make it one worth living in.